All right, so I am preparing the live stream right now. And then I'll throw it up on our page too. So I hope everyone is having a good day today. And they're having nicer weather than we are in Indianapolis. So we are hitting 75 degrees tomorrow in Indy. So throw it up on our page too. Yeah. But what I'm going to do really quick so I don't get echo because I'm getting it from the live stream. Okay. So now that that's taken care of. So first of all, this is a class. So this is CGT 407, Current and Future Trends in Themed Entertainment. And today, Mark and I want to welcome Josh Steadman with us. Josh, I went to put together your bio, and honestly, I didn't know where to begin because you have a long list of amazing places that you have worked before. And so I really just kind of spoke generally to creative direction, director of production and all the above. You've done a lot of work with, obviously having worked with Evermore, obviously Imagineering, Storyland Studios, and now you're with Unrivaled. And so I want to, first of all, thank you for your time with us.
Sure. It's a pleasure.
Today.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So as we get started, this is going to be fairly open. It's students. I've already told students multiple times they need to ask questions, but I just really want to hear a little bit about your history. How did you get involved with the themed entertainment industry, or what basically sparked your initial interest? Why themed entertainment design? Yeah.
It is super random and it's a super niche industry. So it's become less niche, I think now. But 25 years ago, I'll be 45 this summer, when I started pursuing the career path that I'm in now. It's fairly unheard of, like unless it was Disney, and even Universal at the time. Universal Creative was still kind of finding its own footings. Disney was really the only place. Landmark Entertainment might have been the other maybe main competitor, and they were tapped to do Jurassic Park, River Adventure, and all that sort of thing back in the late 90s. But I finished high school in 95 and then started art school at a private junior college in Eastern Idaho, this podunk school. But I just knew ever since I was a kid that my happiness and inspiration and all the things I wanted to do involved designing and building theme parks. So having said that, now I have done a lot of weird things in addition to theme parks. Like I studied film, worked in television, specifically for ABC TV, was a production designer for ABC TV right out of graduate school. So I've kind of had 2 or 3 different careers in the last couple of years, last 20 something years. Theme parks has always been the one kind of main trough that I always wanted to focus on. So maybe I'm rambling a little bit. I don't know if that answered the question you just asked, but sometimes you have these happy accidents and you find things, or they find you, and you end up going different places. Such has been the case with my own life and my career, for sure.
So starting, obviously going to art school, what was the specific degree? What was your focus on? Because obviously you developed some transferable skills there, right?
Sure. So growing up, I wasn't good at a lot of things. In fact, I think it's funny that I'm speaking to your class about computer graphics and tech. I am the least tech-minded, traditionally tech-minded person. Having said that, I have unusual patents and knowledge in tech, working with the Disney company, developing new tech there, but it's really out of the box thinking. And we can go back to that and I'll explain what I mean by that. But Some of the stuff I developed at WDI, you can now see on Rise of the Resistance, and they were effects based and have a lot of theater involved. Having said all of that, my background was art school and studying illustration. I felt like if I really wanted to be a theme park designer, and I could draw, I grew up drawing. So I was saying before I went on that tangent that there was a lot I wasn't good at, but what I was good at was putting pen to paper and drawing. I would doodle and draw growing up, and it kind of was my escapism and a way to kind of like find my own voice. And in the 80s, growing up in Idaho, art was not something that was ever really endorsed. It was always about sports, and it was always about math and science, those type of things. So I kind of did it on my own, and I was always drawing on the side, and then put together a portfolio and then submitted it, and got to study with some professors that were all cum laude professor graduates and teachers where I went to school, where I started undergrad. They had all gone to Art Center, and Art Center at the time had a training processes that was very rigorous to work in film. And at the time, Phantom Menace was still being kind of like, it was still 4 years out when I started school, so that should give you some time frame. But Art Center was tapped by Lucasfilm to design basically everything that was the Star Wars prequels. And I'm a huge film nut. I love film, love comic books, love cool stuff, right? I think that stuff is cool. And so Art Center was kind of like this goal. I was going to go there. So the junior college I went to had a placement program to get to Art Center based on my professors. And I was trained preemptively, very much in the same way that Art Center first and second year students were trained, which was pretty hardcore. I mean, back then, it's different now, but it was not uncommon to have your art being critiqued, then shredded off the wall and torn up in your face and thrown out windows. That actually happened, not to me, but happened to someone I was in school with. Because the old school way of teaching someone, there was no worry about sensitivity. It was, look, the only way you're going to get it, the only way you're going to learn it is if it's taught very hardcore. There are other ways of doing that now, and different methodologies, but that was really how I was taught. And after doing traditional illustration, Art Center then picked me up, offered me a scholarship, and I moved to California with the hopes of paying for that school. What you don't know is that Art Center is like $65,000 a semester or something insane and absurd. I didn't, I had great aspirations. So I was sneaking into figure drawing courses in Pasadena. And then they found out that, I wasn't paying tuition, and so Art Center blocked me, and they said, goodbye, see you later. Coincidentally, by the way, my story, there are several podcasts and stuff out there that you can listen to where people have asked these same kind of type of questions, and like, how did you do, and how have you done what you've done? And I would say a lot of insane tenacity, because I did not have a trust fund, and I did not have someone sponsoring me, right? A patron. Traditionally, artists in the history of art had people sponsor them, everyone from the Renaissance on down, and even before that. So I didn't have any of that. I lived out of my car and waited tables. I did a lot of odd end jobs to want to become a theme park designer. After Art Center kind of like blocked me and said, stop coming to class for free, there was another school I had applied to, and they offered me, they offered me a full ride art scholarship. I didn't want to go to that school because it's a very religious school, it's BYU in Provo, Utah. And they have very strict honor codes, all this other stuff. That stuff was not important to me. What was important to me was an art education. BYU had a very fantastic illustration program and an industrial design program, and they were starting an animation program. What's funny is this would have been 1999, 2000. Now they're the #1 animation program in the United States, if not the world. They beat out Cal Arts, which is so mind-blowing to me because I was there when it was a new program. And there were 4 of us, right? And Kelly Loosley was doing his own thing and teaching, and he had worked at DreamWorks. So I went to BYU because of that. I went to BYU for their animation program, and I went to BYU because they had a really top-notch illustration program. September 11th happened, and September 11th, that is a good podcast. I just saw the note, by the way. Tomorrow Society is a great podcast, mostly because, and I'm tangent again, everyone that's on there, they're kind of like, we're all cut from the same cloth. All these people are like, I'm going to do this no matter what, come hell or high water. That really is the summary of my story, because BYU allowed me to make my own curriculum in entertainment design. There is, if you Google Josh Steadman, theme park designer, somewhere in there in the Google search will be an article while I was at BYU writing this entertainment design program, making it up. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue how to be a theme park guy. I just know I really wanted to do it. What is cool is because of the animation program, I was taking storyboarding, previs development, all done analog, traditional style, like how animation used to be, right? So John Heater, who was Napoleon Dynamite, was in one of my storyboarding classes. He was a film student at BYU. So like all those people, it just was this very bizarre niche group of us kind of marching to the beat of our own drum. And so I became the first in 2003 to graduate with a degree, an emphasis more or less in entertainment design. And the rest went from there, which is another part of the story, a bigger part of the story, actually.
And so obviously I'm going to ask one more question, then I want to turn it over to the students, but I'm really curious, obviously fast forwarding now we're 17, 18 years later, these programs exist that are out there. And obviously we're familiar with them, us being one of the programs. You're sitting across from students today, specifically who want to be a concept designer, right?
Sure.
What skills are you looking for? Obviously you want to know that they can draw, but I want to know what other skills are you looking for from people that you're interviewing today for positions?
You would be surprised, Christian, how many people I get that hit me up that are like, they can't draw, or they have which is foreign to me. Let me explain. As a theme park guy, everything I do as a designer, I think about and put my thoughts on paper and execute what's in my brain, goes through my arm and churns it out traditionally first before it goes anywhere else. That's how I produce my ideas, my thoughts, my iterations. I did not know, and I would have never guessed that in the theme park world, I would say if you are one of those illustrators or artists, designers in that aspect anymore now, it's kind of a rarity. There are a lot of people who design. I just worked for a firm recently where everyone designed verbally. I mean, they were very much from an interior design kind of protege background, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different way of operating. Theme parks is interesting because the background theme parks, Disneyland, all of that, the history the theme parks go way back. So you understand the World's Fair in Chicago. What year was that? 1892 in the Great White City. A lot of people consider that the very first theme park. It was this mix of architects, Renaissance people, landscape architects. I mean, the guy who designed Central Park was brought out to Chicago, and go down a long, long list. the Ferris wheel debuted at the World's Fair in that year. Theme parks was all about visual execution. You go to a theme park, you're stepping into an alternate reality universe that's tangible. I call it tangible alternate reality because it is a different world, but it's also real. Disneyland was designed by people who had worked in film and television. Walt had this pool of knowledge, of talent, building animated films, and drew upon that. A lot of the guys that he had hired and recruited for Disney Feature were film guys. Specifically, name-wise, I don't remember which ones worked where, but I want to say it was either Harper Goff, who worked on the Jungle Cruise, worked on Gone with the Wind. I want to say it was him. It was either him or it was Mark Davis, one of those guys. Anyway, so there are all these people that were recruited from the glory golden age of Hollywood that understood how film sets had to translate to a world that felt the same, felt similar, felt fantastical, but then could stay in scale or not be in scale, and transported people from the humdrum doldrums of daily life, which we all experience, and into an alternate world. I mean, so I'm bouncing around, but all of that has been happening for a long, long time. It's just that it's not always done well. When you work as a theme park person, in my book, the ability to communicate that visually and put it on paper is pretty priceless because, like I said earlier on, it's becoming a rarity. There are not a lot of people who draw very much anymore or who are trained to draw traditionally. So I always look for that. That's my long answer. Very short answer version of that is I look for people who can communicate in a way that, to me, I can produce actual build things from, right? So the reality is, if you're going to execute something, you've got to know the recipe. Okay, here's an analogy. If you're going to bake a cake, there are ingredients that go into baking a cake. There's flour, there's eggs, there's water, there's sugar, there's baking soda. There's all these things. Without one of those ingredients, your cake's going to taste really strange. And if you've ever made a cake without flour, it doesn't really work, right? So being a set designer, a person trained traditionally as an illustrator who then studied set design, who then went into theme parks, who worked in television, my background was learning all the ingredients on how to make a right cake. And I'm not saying my cake's right now. I'm saying that I have ingredients that I trained myself in specifically to make a final product. Sometimes you learn that the hard way, but you know, that's what I look for. I look for people who have something they can back up their words with actual substance. If someone comes to me and says, can you refer me to do a thing? I'll go, okay, so send me your portfolio. Not everyone has one. So then I say, okay, so tell me about yourself. What is it that you want to be, and why do you want to be that thing? And there are people who have the right answers, that are right on the money, that have read all the books, that have watched all the shows, that have read all the comic books and go to all the movies, and they are these people, right? I call them my tribe. Then there are people that don't do any of that, but have this grand vision to be something that really is not in their wheelhouse. Let me give another analogy. If you're going to be a doctor, a surgeon, I don't want any surgeon that didn't go to medical school cutting me open. So why would you say that you want to be a surgeon without doing the homework to become a surgeon, right? It sounds terrible, but you would be surprised how many people call me, hit me up, that love the idea of being a theme park person. They don't know how to get there. So, and sometimes the honest truth is the best way to help them, because they'll spend 20 years pursuing something that isn't what it is. I mean, you really have to be committed, you know? And I can roll this back to Mark, who's working at SpaceX, right? To do that, become that thing, you got to know what you're executing in order to do it, or you're not going to be able to do it, right? So anyway, maybe that sounds harsh, but it's the reality of life.
It's back to the baking analogy. It's a good dose of perfect. Of, right? Yeah. Like there was a time when I was a kid where I was making cookies. I made a bunch of cookies without flour. They just right all over the pan. I was like 9 years old. It's the same thing. You've got to have the ingredients to make the right stuff. That's all there is to it. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying this. Mark and I share these things, right? But it's also always good to hear it from someone else's perspective. I'm going to open the floor up. I obviously have more questions, but I want you all to ask questions of Josh. So Josh has an amazing history and list of experiences. You could hit on a number of different things, from Evermore to his time, his time there, or at Imagineering, or go ahead.
Let me just say that, to work in creative, number one, any time you get to actually be paid to be creative is a huge gift. It's an amazing gift. Number two, I have worked with some really cool studios. I've worked for some studios that were not so cool, but I've always worked, and I've always had the opportunity to work. And I think the thing I'm trying to say is sometimes the dream gig that you spend forever to get isn't always the right gig for a person, right? I learned that the hard way. I think I'm so grateful for my time working at the Disney company. There is no way right now I'd want to go work for Disney again. They are a meat grinder. They put people in and they just make sausages out of you because you just work around the clock. You work. I have never worked, lived, eaten, breathed, worked some more. Because of that, you get really good at what you're supposed to be doing, and it hones the skill, right? So grateful, incredibly grateful for what I got to do. I don't want to repeat that. So for me, it was like the next step. What's the next step? What's something that can teach me something new, that's different, and grow my expertise and grow my knowledge? Evermore was a huge price cut. I didn't make any money building Evermore. When Evermore was pitched to me by Ken, by the owner, it was a passion project. And when Ken showed me the model for it, I knew it would be scrappy theme park theater. In other words, if you've ever worked in theater and you've built a show that premieres on a stage, sometimes you're using black gaff tape to roll things up, and you're doing crazy stuff with cardboard because the audience isn't going to know any different. They're sitting out in the house, in the theater, wanting to see a good show. However you accomplish that show is all that matters when the curtain goes up. And that was Evermore. So I feel very fortunate I got to do Evermore. It was my favorite project I've done in my career. But I didn't make any money on Evermore. And in fact, there were times we weren't making money. We weren't even being paid. And I'm 45 in July. I was 42 doing Evermore. And the challenge was, crap, how am I doing this? Dude, I got to eat ramen, and I'm this old. I'm eating ramen for dinner, and I'm this old, this late in my career. At least I felt late in my career, right? Where it was a huge sacrifice for everyone involved, everybody. Sometimes you make those conscious choices going, I'm not going to make any money, but man, it's going to look freaking badass when it opens, and people are going to love it, and they're going to talk about it forever. That has been Evermore because it was complete DIY, scrappy design, executed design.
Well, and I love that you said that, and you kind of drew that that comparison between WDI and working even at Evermore and what those experiences were like. I was actually in Florida last week and met with people at Franken Design, and we were talking
Love
about
those guys.
Yeah,
know those guys really well. Yeah.
And they were talking about working at WDI and how there really is this pie in the sky kind of glossy experience of doing that. And obviously there's value that you gain value from that experience, but there is so much value in working for these vendors. You're still gonna do the same things, right? You're still gonna get to work for some of the big companies, but it's different, right? So
it is different. Yeah. I think, well, what I'm going to say is that it's good to find passionate people. And I think Franken Design is a good group example of passionate artisans that care about their product. It's really refreshing, and I think the other thing, what I look for now in my career and jobs that I get to do, I like working for these people that are pulling themselves up from their bootstraps, that are doing things that take sacrifice and take guts. Like I've worked the last couple of years for small businesses and private owners and who want to do really interesting things. That's exciting to me because I'm not working for the giant Fortune 500 company studios where sometimes you get lost in the framework of a company, right? I will say, backing up, that when I got the chance to work at Disney, I was recruited by Bruce Vaughn, actually, to work on Shanghai, which was unique in of itself. Bruce was the chief creative officer of Walt Disney Imagineering at the time. He referred me to Doris Hardoon. Doris needed a production designer that would report solely to her. Doris is a legendary Imagineer, and being 35 at the time, and I had given up on wanting to be an Imagineer at that point. That's a whole nother story. And when I met with Doris, it's like the universe just kind of like percolated, collided, and she was, okay, you're reporting to me, you're going to be the only production designer for the world's largest Disney castle. I mean, that's huge, huge. The amount of scope, by the way, had I known what I was biting off at the time, I don't know if I'd say yes. By today, it was insane amount of work. So, but I got to design a walkthrough, there were 3 of us working on it for 2 years. I got to hand touch all the art and craft that went into Gardens of Imagination. I got to design windows and effects, weather vanes on Mickey Avenue with Tim Kirk, who's a legend in theme parks. I look at that now. I don't think they're ever going to do something like that ever again. Not like that. Not where it was still the old meets new, old Imagineers teaching younger Imagineers. I'm really grateful for it because lightning usually only strikes once. It strikes twice, you're pretty lucky. And I feel like my time at WDI, even though I said like I would never want to go back, it's true because I worked so hard, and you have these experiences that are once in a lifetime type things. It's the same if you talk to people, Universal Creative, I believe, who built Harry Potter 1.0, right? Like, at Islands of Adventure. You only get to do that type of thing one time. And that's pretty freaking awesome. If you think about it, like something that unique. Evermore is definitely one of those projects because you can't repeat what we did. Not like that. I mean, dude, I've never had to trowel cement and stick stone. I was troweling cement. I am not a mason. And I'm like doing it hands-on. Like I did that. I built that wall made of that stone. See that wrought iron? I freaking melted that wrought iron. That's pretty awesome, So
I love that. Man. Who questions from the students?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
sure.
So I am currently in the process of scheduling my classes for next semester, and I was debating between whether or not I wanted to take some drawing classes. You definitely answered that for me. But I was wondering what other types of classes you would recommend getting into and really growing in to help get into this type of career.
So what, if you don't mind me asking, only because I know Kristen's class and the class in which I'm speaking to, what's your major? What are you studying?
Themed attraction design.
So it is theme attraction. Okay.
Yeah.
If one day I've been piling a book for young people that's educational and informative. One day when I release that book, it hopefully will answer your question in maybe like 25 chapters or more. But right now, the concise version is, I believe every young person studying themed attraction and entertainment design should have a very thought out, trying to word this the right way. You need to understand theater, stagecraft. That's one item. Like if you had to like build a pyramid quad and with the quadrants to build the base, I would say theater is so necessary. Unfortunately, it's not being taught to me. To me, it's not being taught unless you go to Yale or you're going to UC Irvine or UC Davis doesn't even have the theater program. That's where I graduated with my master's. And by the way, backing up, I will say I graduated with my own emphasis, but really my degree was in illustration and graphic design. So I had honed my ability to draw, and I had a degree in that, in art, basically. It wasn't until 12 years later, almost 12 years later, after interning for ThinkWell, when ThinkWell had 12 people working in the office. I'm not even kidding. There were 12 of us. They had just moved from Pasadena Playhouse, from these weird, strange stage offices in the back of that theater to their own space. And now ThinkWell has like 4 offices and 180 people working for them or whatever. I interned way late. So I was 28 when I interned for ThinkWell the first time, and I interned for them 3 times at $9 an hour. We'll talk about internships here in a minute, but you need to know theater. You need to have an understanding of, I believe, film, the history of film, which can go into theater too, by the way. And there's reasons why that are pretty pertinent to today's IP-driven world, right? If you can engineer and you understand, I am not an engineer and I love and appreciate those who are. My brain doesn't work that way. Too right-brained, right? So if you are an engineer, I would say that's a pretty valuable job and position to have in themed entertainment right now, because they're creating patents, ideas, designs that are unbelievable, and they're engineers doing that, right? If you have some of that, that's pretty great too. And then this is a strange thing, but I think it would help. And that is an idea of what a producer, a project manager, construction background in those worlds and areas, how that fits in. Construction management, any of that. So, you know, I think it's understood Disney has something like 189 disciplines, something crazy. Not everyone has those disciplines. I mean, Disney, you go and you work there, there are people handcrafting lights to hang on a fixture, right? They're welding them, they're sculpting them. No one does that. I mean, Disney does that. Universal probably does that. But the basic knowledge of being a theme park person to me is theater, film, construction, to a degree, and some engineering. And if engineering sings the song for you, meaning that's something that entices you, then freaking own that all the way. because I've worked with right engineers, I've worked with brilliant minds that are invaluable. And I think that's the key word. You make yourself invaluable. A company cannot exist without your existence there, because you're doing things that no one else can do. You know, there are people who are incredible illustrators. I think I learned early on the way I illustrate and all that. I'm not as good as an illustrator as I am a set designer. And I love leading a team of people building things. In other words, right now, the job I have at Unrivaled, I get to lead a team in the shop, building and executing all the designs. I'm not in the creative department on purpose. I made a conscious choice. I've worked in studios. I've worked in studios as a creative director, as an art director. I'm at a stage in my life, I don't want to do that anymore. And if I do, I want to do it in my own time frame. So what I'm doing now is I'm working with very talented people who can build and execute with their hands. And I help them stay on budget. I get them the tools they need to make the deadlines. I help them make the deadlines. It's a lot of it's project planning. And I would say all those things I've learned from being on job sites. Here's another thing, and this is across the board, not directed towards your question, Denise, but don't waste your time at studios, places, or with people that just have ideas. I got lots of ideas. I got notebooks of ideas. Ideas do not look. You want ideas that can be built. So that's the other advice I give to people is theme parks, themed entertainment is themed entertainment because they're executed projects. If it can't be built, can't be executed, it's just an idea, and everybody's got good ideas. Everyone has good ideas. We all have good ideas. So that was the other thing. I purposely find studios, companies that actually build what they say they're going to build. If they're not going to build it and they can't execute it, then I'm not interested. That's a very direct thing to say, but it's just hashtag truth. I don't know what else to say. You can't mince that, right? So.
Other questions for Josh? Quentin, I think you got one.
I do, yes. Thank you so much for spending time with us, talking with the students.
Sure.
Really awesome. So my question to you, because I am, even after your speech, I still am looking into WDI and looking through paths to get into WDI. I want to ask, what was your path?
My first of all, if that's the path you want to do, go for it by all means. Don't let anyone stop you. My path was a path of hardship, accidents, and poverty. Honestly, and I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm being completely honest. I knew I wanted to be an Imagineer ever since I was a little kid. I did everything I could possibly do to study it, and it's insane. I lived out of my car like twice, legitimately twice, showered at 24-hour fitness. And I told this story on Tomorrow's Society. I was literally kicked off Metrolink LA going to Thinkwell because they didn't have the money for a ticket. And instead of not buying a train ticket, they charged me. The train ticket cost like $7. I didn't even have $7, you know. They charged me a $350 ticket fine fee for lying and writing for free. I literally gave up the dream of wanting to be an Imagineer probably in my mid-20s. It's a long story. There's more I could tell. And I think it just brings up a lot of emotion, a lot of thoughts. But and I always get pseudo emotional talking about it because it was hard. When I was finally recruited to be an Imagineer, it was well deserved. And I did it completely honest, and I did it without cheating, and I did it without lying. And I think what I tell people today, especially in themed entertainment, there's no room for a lack of integrity. And I think I've learned so much just working in Hollywood, working in show business. You find people that are not integritous. They're not honest. And somehow they've indoctrinated that is okay. It's kind of like Will Smith slapping Chris Rock on live TV, and that whole feud. It's like none of that was okay. And I say that, I use that analogy because it's so gross. Like, what is happening to people today? If you cannot do the work yourself, produce the work, and own your own work, then you got to find something else to do. And Quentin, I hope nothing I'm saying is offensive at all to your question, but I was, the long story short, my portfolio was plagiarized, and it's a true story, by a fellow student when I was in undergrad. And so I spent 10 years trying to get there on my own, and 10 years and so much education and going to graduate school, and the poverty of graduate school, doing it on your own and all of that, was really hard. So then I worked in LA. I think I'd worked 4 PA shifts on different television shows. So at one point I was driving hardware for a TV show around in my beater car in Hollywood, and buying coffee for celebrities. I mean, this is true. And I was over age of 30, and you watch all these people around you buy homes, buy fancy cars, and I didn't have any of that. I was just trying to make this hope and a dream with nothing but a parachute trying to work. So my advice is, if that's what you want to do, go for it. What I invite anybody to do is to do it right. Do it with integrity, do it with honesty, and do it with hard work and tenacity. And I think it's rare. It's becoming more rare these days, right? That people do it like that, because it's hard. It's really freaking hard. It's hard being kicked off of MetroLink when you're 29 years old because you don't have any money. Literally, you haven't eaten in 4 days. That's really freaking hard. And it's true, I don't know if I even answered it, but every time I tell that story and someone asks that exact question, I blubber up and I break down, because it's a huge part of my story and where I'm at now,
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And thank you for sharing that. It's a very hard journey, it sounds. So I'm glad you're where you are today. So
thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for being real here, Josh. What other questions does everybody have? I know a lot of you want to a lot of you, when I said that we were bringing Josh on, your ears perked up. So here's an opportunity to ask some questions.
I have a question. Yeah. So I was looking on your website and I was checking out your project roles for like Shanghai Disney. And I think for both of them that you have listed, you have show designer and production designer. And then there's also show set designer. Could you talk a bit about the differences in those three positions?
So I was hired to be the production designer on the castle. Traditionally speaking, at WDI, if you're a production designer, you don't illustrate. That was the role they had. I was hired on the outside for 8 to 12 weeks, freelance, show designing the walkthrough as a consultant designer. So when the right role came up and an opportunity opened, Doris was like, dude, we need a production designer. You already designed the walkthrough. why don't we get you into this role full time? And you can own the walkthrough until that thing opens. It's your baby. And I don't know anyone after designing and developing. There have been, let me count real fast, 5 walkthroughs in the history of the Disney company. Disneyland Anaheim, which Eileen Earl, my hero, designed for opening. It's been redone. Chris Merritt, who's a dear friend, he redid it with Tony Baxter. It's the one that you see that's there now. Let's see, Sleeping Beauty's castle in Paris has somewhat of a walkthrough, but they've got a dragon in a dungeon and all of that. So it's not a traditional walkthrough. Cinderella's castle, Tokyo, had a walkthrough, and they redid it. David Bricky, my other dear friend, redid that walkthrough, all princess themed, as with the meet and greet, and then Shanghai's. And so when they gave me the opportunity, like, dude, you get to design this walkthrough, knowing that pedigree of these incredible designers and people that I love, and people I know who are really good friends, I couldn't have said no. So I took the role, took the job, and they transitioned me from show designer to production designer. Show designer, traditionally at the Disney company, designs what everything looks like and how to tell the story visually. So in other words, it's like details like Snow White Scary Adventures on the old attraction had little bunny rabbits and stuff in the AL, the artificial ornamentation on the outside of the building. That's show design, right? Buildings that tell stories, attractions, little niches in the park that help promote what the land story is. Animal Kingdom's a perfect example of that, what Joe Rohde and that team did, because everything supports the thesis statement of the theme park, right? So Animal Kingdom, everything feels natural, feels like it belongs there. Everything's disintegrated, aged, old, fits the motif. That's show design. Production design, generally speaking, traditionally, is you are the one that takes the drawings for build. So the recipe, and you go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure all the drawings are accurate to build and to be executed. If there's something missing, you have enough. Oh, so that was Denise. Added one more thing to your list, architecture, or an idea of drafting, which you can get from theater, by the way. So, so you would go over all the drawings and pull out what doesn't belong, add to what needs to go in. That's show set design and production design. Show set design is the person drafting up that stuff. Production designers are the person taking the drawings, mitigating them before construction, so that when you actually take that cake recipe to build, you can make the cake the right way. It's fine-tuning the recipe. Does that answer that?
Yeah, actually, absolutely.
It gets confusing because everywhere you go, the titles change and shift. Yeah, but and I will tell you, the moment you get out of construction schematic drawings, which is what the show set guy and the production designer is doing, you get into the creative side of things, like art direction, creative direction, show design, which is in the creative world. Those people are running around with those drawings because they're building and executing what's in that recipe, but it's all the creative. It's paint chips, motifs, color and design. It's getting into the foliage, putting foliage on things. Moss goes here. So that's the art direction. That's the artistic side of execution.
That's great. Yeah, I've heard there's the creative side and the technical side. And yeah. I assumed that production design and show set design were on the technical side. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that confirms it for me. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries. By the way, I have to tell you, my favorite people I like working with in theme parks and themed entertainment are the people that understand the cake recipe, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. And It's because of those people, those drawings, because of everyone. But really, I have to say that is the middle of the project. It is the meat of the project. And it's rough, man. Especially do schematic revisions, schematic package revisions, 2.0 packages, and goes on and on and on and on and on. It's a lot of work. So.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other questions? We've got a few more minutes.
I had a question.
Sure.
So in the beginning of this conversation, you kind of touched on like make sure you have a portfolio as someone who wants the creative side and the more artistic side. What is like something that would stand out in a portfolio if you could say anything like that you would see and be like, wow, this portfolio stands above so many others?
Yeah, that is a great question. Here's how I'm going to answer that and it might not be the right answer. It's my answer because this is how I would pursue that. I look for portfolios that don't look like everyone on ArtStation. I just don't. I look for people that do it different and are thinking outside of the box, because those people, I have to tell you, when I did Evermore as an example, and Ken was like, okay, build a team, go for it, go hire the people you need. I specifically recruited people based on what we needed to execute. And their portfolios were way wackadoodle crazy. Like I had guys that drew dragons and like were really great dragon people, and then they could build them in the lost wax process and cast them in bronze, and I'm all, that is what I need. I need that right now, specific to the role, right? That was very specific to the project. Then I had people that just designed stained glass. That's all they wanted to do. They were specific, mostly because the menu of the park, these were the areas and the things I needed. It's not always going to be like that. But I don't draw like anybody I've ever worked. And I don't think this is exactly a compliment, and I'm not complimenting myself. So hear me out. I don't draw like a lot of other people in the industry I work in, mostly because when I interned back in those days of getting kicked off trains and stuff, I had a creative director who was like, dude, you're not an illustrator. I'm all, okay. That's a hell of a thing to say to somebody when they're sitting in front of you and they're drawing all day, right? And then he gave me no feedback as to where to take it. So hopefully everything I've said today can be taken with certain grains, relation and relatable to certain projects, space, time. But I would never tell anybody now, like, look, your work doesn't look like Greg Prose. That's not possible. Greg Prose is a freaking god when it comes to painting digital art. Like, no one's gonna look like Greg Prose stuff. And if your stuff does, good for you. But I wanted to create and produce work that was unique to the way I draw, I design, that stood alone. I can talk about this I can totally preach this for a while, because dude, I'm in my mid 40s and people still at certain studios would be like, yeah, I need you to draw like that other guy. And I'm all, sorry, buddy, that ain't ever going to happen, because the way I draw is who I am. And because I studied set design for theater, I draft. It's on Evermore. You look at it on the Evermore, on my website, right? Everything I did for Evermore, some of that stuff is quick, dirty. I had 2 minutes to produce, 5 minutes. We didn't have time. I didn't have time to sit down and create this beautiful 2-week piece of work, right? We need a catacombs. Here's what the catacombs got to look like. And it's on that website. And it's literally like me just going, okay, you got this, you got this, you got this. Here's the scale. Here's your figure. It's got to be measured to that. Build that. That's what I needed. I didn't have time to sit around and dink around on stuff. We were moving too fast. So I put that stuff on my website on purpose to show sometimes final execution on draft stuff, on drawings and whatnot, can be dirty. As long as you can build from a napkin sketch, that's all that matters. And if the final product looks freaking badass, who cares, right? That's what matters. That's also coming from a person who's worked in theater, because that's how theater works. You know, you have 8 weeks to produce a show, sometimes 12, and you've got a budget of 40K. What are you going to do? How are you going to make it look like magic? Right? So not everyone's going to draw, and no one should draw the way you draw. No one should sculpt the way you build. Be unique. And I think that's my message. I see all your tchotchkes behind you, by the way, and I'm like, this guy obviously is a creative guy, I can tell. Awesome.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I see it. Anyway, I hope that answers something. Be yourself. Do you, but do the best version of you. It's got to be competitive. It's got to be killer, and rock the socks off people, because they want to go, what the heck is that? That's amazing. I want to go to that person. I want to go to there, right? That's the final answer to that, I think.
Thank you.
One more question. Anybody? Any last takers? Alan? Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Alan, go ahead.
Okay. So I do have another question. A couple of us in this class are returning students,
Sure.
looking to do a career change. And I was curious if you might, like, I know your story about doing internships when you were close to 30 or in your 30s. Do you have any advice for any of us looking to change careers or get an internship as an older person?
So, yes, I do, as a matter of fact, because I was old when I started interning. So here's what I'm older than everyone around me, right? In fact, anywhere I work where the intern's like 19, I'm like, I just want to be a creative director tomorrow. And you're like, honey child, get in the back, dude. Seriously, right? So, first of all, my boss this morning was like, ask them if they want to be interns or they need work. I'm all, really? Okay. So the company I work for now is they're laughing at me in the hallway because I just said that and they can hear it. Is looking for people, and you know, it's exhibit design, it's exhibit production. It requires technical minded people, it requires some creative minds, and we're growing. So that answers that. As far as internships, like if you're interested, shoot me a link and I'll get you in touch. So that, and there are some other companies I know of that are looking for people too. I don't think there's anything wrong being an intern when you're old. I see, or older than your competitors, right? Like I said, my career was delayed very late, and I feel like I learned a lot. I learned a lot because I was older. I listened a little bit more. There's something to say about sucking it up and going, you know, I don't have an option. This is who I am. My heart beats this thing. I have to do this thing. And dude, hats off to the people who go to school when they're 80, right? Or 60. You see these posts on Instagram and stuff like these older people, I should say, getting their degrees and getting their education because they never got to do it. Like, dude, freaking killer, man. So I don't think there's a standard, and I don't think there's a rule. And I don't think it's right and fair to yourself to compare to people with everyone else. You know, I'm reading, sorry, Alan, I'm reading Carrie's question. Hold on. What kind of skills are expected when you're hiring an intern? Or will you, okay, here's the main skill I look for when I'm hiring an intern that's not expected to just sit and draw. Okay, so there are interns I'm looking for that are not where I'm at currently, but in the past, to just be drafts people, meaning to show set, draft, or draw and illustrate. Humility. Do you know how many interns I've hired with the hopes that they were just gonna like jump at every chance? Because that's what you do when you're an intern, you're there to learn, right? Having said that, there's appropriate ways of treating interns and inappropriate ways of treating people too. Just because they're an intern doesn't make them a slave to the system. So let me just say that. But I had an intern that I hired full time. Her mom literally called me and asked, why didn't I make her the new art director? And I'm like, she's worked for me 6 months. Like, or young people that I've hired, these are bad negative version stories of this, who wouldn't do anything I asked them to do. That would fight me on stuff. And I'm all, dude, you are 20 years old. You're still in school. And you're already fighting me, who's giving you this huge opportunity to build a theme park in a cornfield. How are you going to do when you're down at the Disney company or at Universal or another studio? Like, humility is everything. It goes a long way. And attitude is not bad attitude. Good attitude goes such a long way. Like, you know, and I'm speaking from experience, both as an intern, as someone who has hired them. Like, you know.
If, by the way, if Josh hires any one of you and he contacts me and says your mom contacted, like, just
Extreme case, but
Mark and I will give you the hardest time, just to let you know.
It just is unique.
It'll be no time.
Well, oh, Mark's cutting out. So
Mark, you turned into Mr. Robot.
He did. Yeah.
But
all that,
Oh man.
I was gonna say that was an extreme case, but that literally happened, and I'm all, are you kidding me? What do you think this is? You
but
know?
it happens. It's honestly, I'm gonna tell you, it's happened to me as a faculty member. So
Oh, I don't know how you deal.
a lot of, yeah. Anyways, I'm like, I'm amongst, drinks aren't on the table right now. So anyways, Josh, I want to thank you for your time. This was super invaluable
Thanks for having me.
for the students, for us. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for doing it. I'm going to turn off the live stream, and yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me so much. Good talking with you all. Good luck